in this video, we're going to give you some pointers on some general navigation with the iOS app. First, let's go ahead and open the app. So the app's already loaded. Touch the app, and the app will open. If it's the first time that you're opening the app, it's going to open up in the wizard. In this case, we've had it open previously. The first thing that I'd like to show you, notice at the bottom of the app you have 3 different items. There's the dashboard, the AS3X settings, and model select. For now, let's pick the middle one. So touch the middle, and you'll notice that that brings you to your settings. This is the setting screen. This is where you're going to be making all of your adjustments for your model. Let's first investigate initial settings. That opens up all the various settings that you'll have available. And within each one of these settings, I'm going to go ahead and select surface setup, for example. You'll notice that at the top of all of these screens, or the majority of these screens, there's a question mark. Hit that question mark, and you'll see that there is a tutorial. The first part of the tutorial actually shows you how to navigate that particular screen. In this case, it shows you how to access the surface. It shows you how to access Spektrum, and so on. If you hit the screen again, there's actually supporting text for each one of these screens that tells you what reverse is and basically how to set reverse. In this case, Spektrum, travel, and all the functions that are within surface setup. So these are some of the important things to understand about navigation. Let's pick another one. Port assignment, same situation. There'll be pop-ups that occur occasionally that explain some warnings, or hey, do this, set your transmitter to do this, and so on and so forth. Be sure to very carefully watch those. And so I'm going to get out of there. And again, we have a help screen that's going to show you the gestures, how to actually access the port screens and so on. And then we're going to have a text that supports each one of those segments. Now, let's go back to surface setup. Okay, when you're doing surface setup, in order to access the surface, you notice you have a right aileron, left aileron, rudder, and elevator. You simply touch what you want, and that'll pop up. In order to access any of those items, reverse, simply touch, forward, reverse. For travel, you hit the travel segment. It'll open up a screen that has a graph. In order to, you can either go through the help screen, and it'll show you how to navigate. It shows how to do travel and individual travel right and left. And then the next screen again shows you how to, it gives a description of what travel is and how to adjust it. And then we'll go back to the travel section, and we'll actually show you how. So when you don't select the left or right, both of them are highlighted, and you scroll up and down, that actually increases and decreases the value. If you want to independently adjust the right or left, you tap right or left, and now you'll see that you can independently scroll and touch right, or if you want to do left, independently adjust left. So continuing on, there's a function called wizard. What the wizard is used for is it actually will take you through all the steps of setting up your model. And in fact, when you open up the application in a new model or for the first time, it'll start you out in the wizard. Going through the wizard, it will take you step by step with all the things you need to do for the basic setup. Now, let's go to the next functions that are in settings. There's an expo function. So exponential is adjusted in the application rather than the transmitter. In order to go from there are 3 different axes. You'll see there's a roll axis. You can scroll by touching the roll to access the pitch. Scroll again and you'll access yaw. Okay, so scroll to whichever axis you choose, in this case pitch. I want to adjust flight mode 2 so I can touch the screen, and you'll see that now I can adjust my exponential for flight mode 2. If I move it up and down, you'll see that I increase and decrease my exponential. So there's 50% exponential, there's so on. And I can also independently adjust my right or left exponential. I'll do my pitch down, and you can see I can adjust that independently, or I can adjust my up independently. Or that's both, and then that's independently. So that's how that works. And again, there's a help screen that allows me to go in. It explains what exponential does. It shows you how to navigate exponential like we just showed you. And then it also gives an explanation of what exponential actually is. So let me get out of there. Gains and priorities. Now, this is where you're going to be setting your gain. You're going to see you have a rate, a heading, and priority. So let me go ahead again. You can scroll right or left to access roll, pitch, and yaw. Again, I'm going to go to pitch. I'm going to select flight mode 2, and that will pop up the screen. Now, in order to increase my rate gain, I touch and I increase or decrease the value I want. And as it says at the top, pitch, flight mode 2 is being adjusted. For heading gain, heading is only affected the very center position of the stick. I actually touch in the middle of the screen and I increase or decrease my heading gain to the values that I want. And priority, I touch the screen and I move right and left. Okay? In order to exit any of these, I touch the back button and it takes me out of that screen. You'll see that below the gain screen then there are also highlights I can either access through going through the graph, or like let's say for example I want to go to flight mode 2 and I want to make a heading gain adjustment. I can simply touch right now where it says 77 and that'll pull it up directly, and then I can make gain adjustments there. Same situation, I'll go to, let me go to aileron, which is roll. If I go to the rate gain settings, you can see I can increase or decrease my rate gain, and then I can adjust my priority, and so on. Okay, so that's the general functions on the AS3X settings. That gives you a basic idea of how to manipulate those screens. Next, we're going to go to the dashboard. So this section is not intended to give you specifics on how to adjust them or the specific adjustments and what they do. What this section is intended to do is basically the gestures that you're going to be making in order to make those changes. It's kind of giving you a tour of how to use the application before we really dive into it in one of the next steps. The next thing we're going to go to at the bottom of our screen, you'll see there says dashboard. What the dashboard is, think of this as a summary of the settings that you most frequently use. So in this case we have the roll, pitch, and the yaw axis in flight mode 1, and of course the gains are available there. We have our dual rate and our expo settings. Those are things that we're going to be changing quite a bit. By the way, if we had selected a wing type that had two servos, we would also have a differential screen. It's not popping up here because we didn't select that. But so keep in mind, the way that this works is I can go from flight mode 1 to flight mode 2 to flight mode 3 by simply swiping right or left. And then anytime I want to make any changes to any of these, say for example, my heading gain is at 0 and I want to increase that in flight mode 1 for roll. So I simply tap that and this section comes up, and then you can see that I can either increase or decrease by hitting the plus or minus button, or I can push the center and then I can actually digitally put in, say I want 50%, 50, and then I have 50 there. So that's how you're able to access that mode. Same thing for any of the functions. Anything you want to change from this screen, first off it gives you a display and it gives you comparative numbers for flight mode 1, 2, and 3. But anytime you want to make a change, you just touch the box and the box will come up, and then you can either hit plus or minus. And in this case I can independently adjust right or left just by touching the right or left button, or I can hit the values like 125. And now we have 125% in the yaw section. So that's how that works. The next thing I'd like to show you is the model select screen. So that's the model select. That's the third item that's available here. And you'll see that in order to create a new model, and this is how it comes up, I simply push that. It'll create a new model and it will automatically take me to the model setting screen. If I push the top, it's going to allow me to take a picture. I'll take a camera. I don't have a very good picture loaded here, but I'll use that and I'll use that photo. In this case I'm going to choose a receiver. You'll see that it comes up on the bottom. I'm going to be using the 636 and I'll hit done. And the transmitter I'm going to use, I'm going to go ahead and scroll and say I'm going to use a DX9 and I hit done. Then I'll just go through this whole process. This is essentially the wizard. I'll go through the whole wizard step by step, setting up the airplane. And as I said, there'll be pop-ups that will come up frequently and explain things you have to do. In this case, it tells you how you have to set your transmitter. This is the port assignment screen. In order to access the ports, actually in this screen in the wizard, this section is set up so that it shows you where to plug in the servos, like the right aileron, the left aileron, the elevator, and the rudder, what ports those actually plug into. So it makes it very easy when you're setting the airplane up. It tells you clearly where everything needs to be plugged into. This is your fail-safe screen, surface setup screen. Like I said earlier, when you get to the surface setup screen, you hit whatever you choose. This is what the balance screen looks like. In order to manipulate the balance, I choose whatever point in the stroke that I want out of one of the 7 points. If I choose here, I can click and drag that up and down just by touching that point. When I release, it goes back to, it releases it and stays in that position. And again, like most screens, it has a help screen. It explains how balance is being used and what's it for, and the navigation, and then it explains why you would use balance and what the function of balance is. So as I mentioned earlier, this section was really intended to give you the basic idea of how to navigate through the screens. Probably the most beneficial thing I can tell you, if you have any issues or questions, there's generally on almost every screen there's that question mark in the upper right hand corner. If you push that, it'll show you how to navigate, and then if you go to the next screen, there'll be supporting text that explains what that function does. Obviously, this video is going to be available to you as well online, so if you have any specific questions, go to the section of the video. It should give you the support that you need, and obviously if you have questions beyond that, feel free to give our product support staff a call, as they're trained to be able to answer your questions about this.